Hello, good afternoon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here for Neste's afternoon, talking about the roadmap to decarbonising goods transport. My name is Sasha Twining. I am your independent moderator and facilitator today. Now, you don't need me to tell you how important it is to decarbonise goods transport. And I know that there will be a lot of different opinions in the room, different thoughts, different views, but I think it's very fair to say that we can all be agreed on the end point of where we need to get to. And to that end, I am sure that we will have some really good and open discussions here today. And it gives me great pleasure to start the afternoon for you with someone to set the tone and set the areas of our discussion. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the Chief Executive of Neste, Matti Lehmus.
So, good afternoon, a warm welcome and thank you for being here. I think it's really great to have you all here to join into this very interesting topic, and of course it's a great location to talk about the future of transport that we have chosen for this event. Because that is, of course, what we are here to discuss this afternoon. And in particular, we want to talk about the future and about how to reduce emissions from heavy-duty transport. So perhaps I can start by setting a little bit of context why this is such an important topic. In the European Union today, we have around 6.2 million trucks in circulation. And on top of that, we have almost 700,000 buses. And what this means is that trucks transport around 75% of all the goods in the European Union. And when looking at these numbers, it's quite easy to see why transport plays such an important role as a sector also when we look at the impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So today, the transportation sector accounts for more than 1/4 of the European Union's greenhouse gas emissions, and out of that, again, more than 1/4 actually is coming from the sector of heavy-duty vehicles. So I think when we are here to talk about the important topic of reducing emissions, it's clear why it's such an important area in heavy duty that we have chosen for this panel. I think we all know, and it was said also in the opening here, that the end state is very clear. We need to reduce emissions in order to fight climate change and global warming. What I'm, of course, very pleased about is to observe that there has been a lot of development in vehicle design, in engine technology, new powertrains. So a lot of development is happening. But what is good to note is that at the same time, we also have an increasing demand for transportation. And this means that the volume of transport have been growing over time. They continue to grow. So transport indeed is a sector which is very much linked to our way of living and the needs of the people of society. And what that means in practice is that we have to solve that challenge of meeting those needs, but doing it in a sustainable way. So to put it very simply, more transportation, but less emissions. In February of this year, the European Commission published its review of the CO2 emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles, and it called for a 90% reduction of emissions by 2040. At Neste, we welcome this policy action, and reducing emissions is very much at the heart of our purpose as a company, but also the solutions, the products we are working on. We believe that the legislation that is underway presents an opportunity to really accelerate emission reductions and replacing fossil fuels with renewable solutions. And we, in a way, see this already happening in a number of segments, and I'm sure everybody is following it. Whether we look at road transportation, where both electrification is growing, renewable fuels use is growing, we are also following closely the aviation segment, where we see that Right now, we are seeing the introduction of sustainable aviation fuels happening, which is one avenue to reduce emissions in this segment. And here we can again see how legislation or regulation can really support the acceleration of new technologies and initiatives that have an impactful change. So we do understand that ambitious climate policies can be very useful and have an important role in providing direction to the whole industry, to accelerate change and to really mandate improvement. And we need all essential mechanisms in this process of decarbonizing transportation. How we see it is that we need those solutions which are available today, and we need the solutions that are the new solutions that are available tomorrow, and that will then be supporting to reach that ambition in the long term. We need solutions for all segments. We need, looking at the size of the challenge of really getting to that 90% of reduction in emissions, we need a range of options that are then enabling us to reach that ambition over time. And then it's good to look at the variety of options that are needed in the European landscape, because we have very different environments where, for example, trucks are traveling. So we will need electrification, we believe we will need technologies like fuel cells and hydrogen, and we certainly see that it also needs low carbon or fully decarbonized liquid fuels. One observation is that if we look a decade from today, the estimation, and this is from the European Commission, is that still 10 years from today, roughly 3/4 of the trucks on the roads will be using internal combustion engines or hybrids, which again means that we need also solutions to decarbonize these vehicles. The other observation is that we also need low carbon solution for those market segments, whether it's a region or an application, where it's difficult to electrify. So I want to finish by saying that there is a Finnish proverb that says that those who ask will find the way. And that is really why we are here today. We are having two panels that we will hear from. And we are really trying here to bring together experts from different European countries, from different companies, with different perspectives. And that is what we expect, different perspectives, different opinions. And it's really for us a great opportunity for discussion. And why is it such a great opportunity? Because we really have speakers also from different fields. We have here represented the automotive industry, we have fuel producers, we have parts manufacturers, we have policymakers, we have both regional and national governments represented, so a variety of perspectives. So we really hope that during the two panel discussions this afternoon, we can better understand these different perspectives. We can hear about the approaches to tackle the challenge of greening our roads. And that's the expectation. We will be hearing about the progress that has been made, some of the roadblocks that have been identified, as well as the ideas how we can overcome the hurdles. And ultimately, the target is, of course, to hear how we feel we can reach that target of net zero emissions by 2050 and at least 90% emission reductions in the heavy-duty sector by 2040. So looking forward to a great dialogue today. And of course, the timing is great as the Commission has made a proposal and we are entering a legislative process where we hope that this afternoon can also be part of that dialogue, which then helps to identify the best solutions and to reach that ambition that is really needed. Thank you.
Take a seat. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Matti. So, as Matti says, we have two panels this afternoon. The first one is very much going to look at the hows, the whys and wheres. Where are we at the moment? And then as we go through later this afternoon, we will look more about the regulation, the legislation, and everything like that. So I'm going to introduce my first panel for you now, and if I could just ask you to keep your welcome applause for the end of the list of panelists. Please welcome from Iveco, the Chief Executive, Gerrit Marx. We also have here from Volvo Trucks, the Senior Vice President for North and Central Europe, Anna Muller. We have from Deutsche Bahn Cargo, Jörg Schneider. MEP from Sweden, from the Green Party, Jakob Dalunde, and also joining us, Matty's going to stay on stage. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome your panelists. I mean, I think what you will possibly notice straight away is that, as Matty was alluding to at the beginning, we've tried to bring together people from different parts of the industry, but actually different parts of the equation when it comes to reaching net zero. So thank you all very much for being here and for giving us your time this afternoon. Now, what we have asked our panelists to do is give a very short positioning statement at the beginning. So not a long presentation, but just a few words from all of you to sort of lay out where they sit in this equation. So, Gerrit, if you would like to start for us.
Should I sit or?
What would you prefer?
Oh, I sit
you like to stand. Let me move out of your way.
Hour, so I really want to. I hope I don't.
Go for it.
The microphone here. So 90 seconds, you said.
I'm not timing. Don't worry. It's fine.
Raise your hand if I'm not in line with that. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. So I subscribe everything that was said about we have to decarbonize ASAP. We need to go fast. We need to go net zero. We need to go electric. We need to do all of these things. However, we have a reality around us. And there's not a single technology that provides the single answer. That is not going to happen. And there are three reasons. I would elaborate. There are more, but there are three reasons to elaborate on. We have millions of trucks on the road. They need to decarbonize, and they need to decarbonize today. The only way to get there is renewable fuels, CO2 neutral fuels, and we need them ASAP because you're not getting those million trucks off the road. And you will not replace them either with electric trucks that cost 2 or 3 times the diesel truck. No fleet can afford this. It's not going to happen. Okay? So we need renewable fuels for exactly that reason. The second reason why there is not a single technology, and that's why we need battery electric and we need fuel cell and hydrogen combustion, which is actually for me at times quite attractive over the fuel cell for several reasons we can discuss later, is we need competition between technologies. Man didn't land on the moon. We didn't have the great invention of mankind because politicians decided to do so. It never happens. When politicians decide, it goes wrong. We have to keep the boundary conditions of technologies to compete. We need to keep all of them in the game, and we will sort them out, and supply and demand will regulate what will win. This is what got us out, basically into the position where we are, and competition is of utmost importance, and regulators, and this is one technology just never worked. There's not a single example in the history. And the third reason is infrastructure. We absolutely welcome the AFIR or the AFIT, first the AFIT, then the AFIR, but it's insufficient. If you look at what is being decided, it helps us to decarbonize with hydrogen and with battery electric, maybe 15–20% of transport. It doesn't go anywhere further than this. We need much, much tougher targets for AFIR. We need much, much tighter recharging and refueling infrastructures. And we need to have the entire value chain penalized if they do not fulfill their targets, and not just the OEMs. I think we are living through the end of an era of punishing automotive, because it was very welcome to punish automotive from every side. But just punishing automotive and not punishing the fuel side, not punishing the refueling side, the energy origin or so, is plain stupid, because what you kill is you kill a lot of jobs in Europe. You just kill them, and you are not replacing them with anything else, because the jobs will just leave Europe. That's it. So we need to have end-to-end thinking, value chain thinking, targets along the value chain, and consistent policy making, and a bit of a better alignment between the Commissioner of Industry, Climate, and Transport, because they don't talk to each other, they don't align their stuff, and what they come up with is partially driven by individual agendas and legacies, but not by doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anna, what would you rather?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume everyone wants to now. Yeah. I'm just going to play.
I think we follow that.
Yes.
It feels better. So, thank you for having me here today. And this event is about decarbonizing transport. I think we need to remind ourselves all the time about the final target that we have. And this is something that I myself, but also my colleagues at Volvo Trucks, we are extremely passionate about this subject. We are part of the Volvo Group, and we have signed up to the science-based targets, supporting the Paris Agreement to reduce, to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees. And this means that for Volvo Trucks, we need to be net zero by 2040. But again, as you also mentioned here, Garrett, we do not either believe that there is one silver bullet when it comes to the technology to achieve that target. We need to work with battery electric vehicles, we need to work with fuel cell electric, and we also will work with combustion engines running on renewable fuels, like biogas, like HVO, like green hydrogen. But we are also convinced that we can decarbonize a majority of the transports in Europe already today by electric trucks. 45% of transports in Europe today are transported less than 300 kilometers. And we have to date sold more than 5,000 electric trucks in 38 countries, the majority of them in Northern and Central Europe. And we have some experience now with the trucks since 2019. And what we see is that the maturity among our customers increasing dramatically. The trucks are there. The interest from transport buyers, who have also signed up to very aggressive CO2 targets, is definitely there. But the transformation is still going too slow. And this is because the enabling conditions are not yet in place. Our customers need long-term, coherent, cohesive frameworks when it comes to green energy, charging infrastructure, CO2 taxation, and investment support in order to facilitate an accelerated decarbonization of transports. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I would like to sit.
You would like to sit? Okay.
So my name is Jörg Schneider. I am from DB Cargo, Germany. So for everyone who doesn't know, DB Cargo is the biggest rail freight operator in Europe, and we are dealing with a rail freight business. And together with my team, I'm responsible for the green transformation of our locomotives, but also for our facilities, buildings, and car fleet. And our all-over goal is to be climate neutral until 2040, so in whole Europe. And really important is that the climate protection goals of the European Union can't only be achieved by rail. Because, as Sasha says, the volume of transport will be rising in the next years, and we need a solution how to provide climate or environment-friendly transports, and rail could be a solution. And of course, today I'm the only one from the rail freight business, so I have to represent the interests of this sector. So I said once, the transport by rail saves over 80% of greenhouse gas emissions compared to road. So this is something we can provide today and not tomorrow. And this is super important when we think in the future. So we should combine our activities in the near distance. We need some trucks, of course. Not every customer has access to some rail ports, but on the long term, on a long distance, and we are starting with a distance up to 400, 500 kilometers, then the rail is much more efficient than a truck could be. So, and yeah, I'm looking forward for the panel discussions, and I would like to hand over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jörg. Thank you. Jakob.
The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Tesla was founded in 2003. At that point, EV sales wasn't 20%, it wasn't 2%, it was barely 0.2%. Most people at that point believed that Elon Musk was crazy. Many people still believe he's crazy, but maybe for other reasons. In 2003, there were no EV mandates. There was no charging infrastructure. There was very little consumer demand. The only thing that existed was a belief in Tesla that the transport sector needed to decarbonize, and they believed in their own dreams that they could be the leaders. I think today many car manufacturers would have liked to have made the same realization then in 2003 as Tesla did, and I think they regret being laggards in this process. In the previous mandate, I was in charge of negotiating the very same ban on the internal combustion engine that we just take the decision now, but I tried to make the very same decision in the previous term. And when I met with lobbyists from the car manufacturing sector, they were lobbying against such a proposal because they themselves did not believe that it was possible. Why did Tesla believe it and why did others not? Well, I think it's actually a matter because many people in the management of many car manufacturers themselves were engineers who themselves made the internal combustion engine possible, and they believed in their own technology, and they did not believe in the new technology. In order to make this transition happen, we need leaders both in the car manufacturing sector, but also in the truck manufacturing sector and the suppliers of charging infrastructure and fuel sector that believe in this dream. Because we are now in the process of making a similar legislation for the heavy-duty vehicles as we just had on the private cars. And it really matters what me and my colleagues will hear from the sector. Will they hear fear from the sector? It's going too fast. It's not profitable. There's no charging infrastructure. Well, then the policy will slow down. And I believe manufacturers in other parts of the world will lead, and European manufacturers will have to follow eventually. But if me and my colleagues hear from you that you believe that it is possible, then the policy will come quicker. It will be more ambitious. Because the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, Matti, do you want to come in on any of that? Do you want to pick up on any of it? Very welcome to give more words if you would like. It's up to you.
Perhaps I can just make a very short additional comment after the openings. I mean, the thought I want to share is, of course, as Neste, we have gone through a major transformation in the last decade and really turned our business, let's say, the focus into the renewables. One thing that we are proud about, if I take last year as an example, is we were last year able to reduce our customers' emissions by 11 million tons. And that's part of the message that we feel it's important to use those solutions available today while working also in parallel on the solutions that are growing and that are important tomorrow. And I've been in the industry for now almost 2 decades. The one theme that I've talked about over the years, over and over again, is that we need long-term regulatory frameworks. We need regulation that stimulates innovation and that enables different solutions to work. And why is it so important? It's important because the ambition we have, and it's needed, is so high. So we will need these different solutions to coexist, and whether it's electrification, hydrogen, fuel cells, but we also feel there is a very important complementary role for the liquid fuels with very low or zero well-to-wheel life cycle emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. From the panel, you were getting nods there from Anna, Jakob. I think you were listening and taking that in. Let's find out what you think before we start this discussion. I'm going to start with speed, because speed was something, Jakob, that you said. So my question to the audience, and I know these are difficult to answer, but let's just get a general feel as to what you think. I'm going to ask you if the industry is doing enough and at the right speed towards decarbonisation, okay? So I'm going to ask you whether it's about right, too slow, far too slow, or, as you've said, far too quick. Okay, so they'll be your options. So please raise your hands, and to the panel as well. Raise your hands if you think the speed on the pathway to decarbonisation is about right. Okay. Okay, too slow. Okay, and far too slow. Well, I mean, that wasn't going to be a surprise, I have to say. Sorry, I didn't see the audience. Far too slow? Was there anyone far too slow? And is there anyone here who said, actually, it's too quick? We're going too quick. Okay, we have one outlier there. You two I'm going to put in a room later, and you can you can discuss that yourselves. As we stand here on the last day of May, so imagine where we are now in 2023, and yes, I know it's crazy that it's already the last day of May in 2023, and you look ahead with everything that you know, do you feel that the industry is on the right pathway? Okay, so it's just going to be a simple yes or no on this one. I know it's difficult, so I'll throw in it's complicated as well. So yes, I feel that the industry is on the right pathway. Okay, a couple, anyone?
If we are on the right pathway.
Yeah, we are on the right
okay.
pathway.
Right, okay, fine.
So.
Whew, I was about to wonder, yeah.
No.
No, totally wrong. Totally wrong. We're going down the wrong route. No, okay. Or it's complicated. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think there was a couple who put their hands up for both, so that's very complicated there. Let's look at some of the difficulties and the challenges with where we are at the moment. And I'm very much going to keep this with an open discussion with the audience as well. Anna, I'm going to start with you. Challenges with electrification. What are your thoughts from Volvo? What are the sticking points as you look down the line? You said you were on the right pathway, but what are the challenges?
I mean, we have all our models right now being electrified and available on the market since last year. So I think we are ready with the products are there. I think one of the challenges that I was into is that if you look at the globally, but in particular in Europe then, if you concentrate on that, is that the majority of the transporters in the hauliers in Europe are small or medium-sized, family-owned companies many times. They need to have their truck purchase to be profitable from the first truck. So they need an horizon where they can foresee the cost and the return of 4 or 5 years. Otherwise, it's very difficult for them to take the step. And I think this is where the framework comes in. And you know, we are now talking about the Green Deal answer to IRA. IRA are already in implementation. I think we need this framework that is long-term and that is cohesive and coherent when it comes to a number of areas in order to accelerate the speed. So I don't think it's on the product right now. It's on the enabling factors.
Okay. When you say it's not on the product, but you started by saying these were small and medium-sized enterprises. So are you saying it's the finance required to buy the product?
No, I think it is
not being sure.
No, you need to get away from just talking about the purchase price. When it comes to operating these trucks, you need to know what is the road taxation of these vehicles. How will the charging infrastructure develop in the future, but especially regarding taxation and investment support. So how competitive will they be? Because with an electric truck, you talk about the TCO over a longer period of time because you have a higher purchase price but a lower operating price. So this is a totally different discussion. So I think this is, you know, we have met thousands of customers the last few years on different launches and events and activities, and I see the maturity is going so fast now in the industry. It's not about if they should decarbonize, it's about how they should decarbonize. But they need to have the framework from the political side to dare to take that leap. I think you have some markets, Netherlands, Germany, Norway is not in the EU, but still they're good. Sweden, Austria, now Switzerland, they are starting to get there. But, you know, it's going too slow.
You were nodding, Gerrit.
Totally, and I don't want to repeat, but I 100% agree with what you said. We also have the lineups electrified, and we are adding fuel cells as well, and now hydrogen combustion as well as the third one. Besides renewable fuels, obviously, as a base. The point is just we are living through a very, very inconsistent set of policies that just don't talk to each other. When you look at the infrastructure on charging, on refueling, on whatever it is, on pressure or power charge, I mean, like, what do we do now? 350? Do we 1 megawatt? And etc. It is inconsistent. And the member states, some of them are screaming for tougher targets, are the ones who don't have the pockets to, in the end, fund the infrastructure in the respective countries. So we are the only ones in the whole value chain getting punished if we don't get it right. The fuel makers are not getting punished. The electricity providers are not getting punished. Nobody gets punished, just the let's say the truck makers, the passenger cars. And I'm not saying this is unfair. I'm not crying, so you won't see me crying here. But it's simply the ones who get punished is us, and they think that industries that are multiple times larger than we are as a truck industry, we are tiny compared to the energy industry, to the refueling industry. We are tiny. And we, with targets on us, should decarbonize the transport. It's not going to happen. I mean, we have the electric, we have all the vehicles. But to her point, this has nothing to do with cars. You can never compare cars with trucks. Cars is B2C. You can choose to buy a car or you don't. You can choose to buy this brand or that brand. You can choose to buy a large or a small one. This is business to business. And when you are in the business of long-haul trucking, you have 50 trucks, heavy-duty Volvos, let's say, well, Ivecos, and then you need to change 10 of them to become electric. And suddenly you're looking at a purchase price in the first place, which is 2 to 3 times higher than the diesel. Your house bank tells you you're nuts. New technology, risk, downtime. We're not going to fund this. Then you go into packaged solutions, transport as a service, which Volvo does, we do, and others do as well. And then they basically will long-term rent the vehicle from you, but they don't really commit to a long-term use. Because these businesses have razor blade small margins, and they bet their family business on this, right? If you are wasting 30,000 on the wrong purchase of a car, it's painful, but you're not going to die necessarily. But if you purchase the wrong 10 trucks of the wrong technology, fuel cell, battery, whatever, you'll be out of business and people lose their jobs. And that's the consequence. And that's why cars and trucks have absolutely zero in common. We all have a dream. We all have multiple dreams. But the way to do this in commercial vehicles is not the way of passenger cars, not at all.
Do you want to come in on that, Jakob, at all? Because you're sitting there with a very sort of thoughtful look on your face.
Well, I mean, of course, the industries are different. I'm not arguing that they are very much the same. However, I do believe that the fundamental mentality in what the leaders of companies themselves believe in and what they say to politicians are somewhat matter in the same way. That if politicians hear from the sector that they would like to have stronger mandates, that they would like stronger incentives for the purchasers, if they would like a higher tax on the emissions of the fossil-based vehicles, then that transition could be quicker. I appreciate that it's difficult for the industry to move, especially for the manufacturers, and also for the manufacturers of fuel. That it's difficult for them to act more quickly if there's no increased demand for their products from the transportation buyers. This is the fundamental thing that has to be changed. And the problem is that buying fossil fuel is dirt cheap. Burning fossil fuel is dirt cheap. If we change this, then we of course change the dynamic for those who buy the vehicles. And then we create incentives for the vehicle manufacturers and for the fuel manufacturers. So what's lacking is the incentive for the transportation buyers. And that needs to come from policy. And policymakers need to hear this from the industry in order to make that happen.
Matti?
Yeah, very good to listen to the comments of the challenges. I mean, the way perhaps we have looked at it, ultimately it's very clear that we need these different solutions. Perhaps we see as the main challenge the speed.
What's
the speed.
Speed.
because ultimately it's great to go towards 2035 or 2040, but what actually matters a lot what also happens in the next 10 years. And that is why we think it's so important to recognize this combination, that we have solutions which can be scaled up immediately, others which take more time. All of them will take time when you scale them up. That's just in the nature of having to build infrastructures, having to still develop some of the technologies. So it's really about the speed. And then it's really this combination of being able to replace fossil fuels with the solutions today, and in parallel scaling up, whether it's electrification, hydrogen, and like I said, the main thing we have been commenting on the regulation is that it would really benefit from also recognizing some of the solutions that are today in parallel to the new solutions that are now being rightly pushed ahead.
So your focus is looking at, I'm using your words, but lots of different solutions, lots of different pathways to decarbonisation.
Let's say we will need, obviously not an endless number, but enough different solutions that we can tackle the different segments. And we believe there will be segments where electrification is perfect. We believe there are segments where hydrogen is perfect. And yes, there will be some segments where liquid fuels, whether it's e-fuels or then renewable fuels, are preferred because, for example, infrastructure is very difficult to build. And then the second point is that we do have those 6 million trucks on the road. And even if we succeed, which I hope we will with this ambition, it means that still in 2030, we have only reduced fossil fuel demand in transport by roughly 10%. So there is still that challenge to accelerate that development.
Lots of nods from Jakob there. I'm going to come to you in a moment, Jörg, but Anna, I just want to get Volvo's view on what you've just heard from Matti, who very much wants different solutions, not an unlimited number of solutions, but a few solutions. Volvo very much prioritizing electrification only.
No, as I said, we are working with a three-part strategy. We work with the electric trucks, battery electric trucks, fuel cell trucks, and combustion engines that are running on renewable fuels. All our trucks that leaving the Tuve plant today, they are fueled with HVO. I mean, all our engines can be running on HVO today. So, of course, we are pursuing all these three paths today, and then I think it's important that we focus on what we should achieve, that is the decarbonization. Not to regulate different technologies, but to look at the end game here. I think that is critical. Yes, we have a great belief in battery electric vehicles. We believe, as I said, that we could decarbonize the majority of European transports with electric trucks. As I said, 45% of the transports are under 300 kilometers today. But again, to your point, you also have the other transports that cannot then be covered with battery electric. You have the globe also. So, I mean, we need all these technologies to fit all the applications of our customers. So I think that is our answer. I don't think there is a silver bullet, and we will need all these different technologies most likely to reach the target.
Jörg, let me bring you in here. Anna's just mentioned HVO. This is something you know a lot about, okay? Deutschbahn and HVO, this is something that you've really embraced. Do you want to tell us how that's working out for you and what you're doing with it?
Of course, but first of all, I would like to explain a little bit of the background, because we have a different segment compared to truck transport. So in Germany, we have an electrification rate in our network by 62% actually, and it will be increased until 2030 up to 75%. But we as a train operator, we are performing around 95% of our transport service electrically, so on only 5% with combustion engine locomotives. So the problem is that these 5% makes over 35% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So, and if you are looking on new technologies, fuel cells, battery technology, they are not available for our business, because a truck has a weight of 44 tons. We are talking about train weights up to 2,000 tons in single tractions. So these technologies are not available now. So Of course, we can wait until these technologies will be available, but the climate heating process is going on now and not in the future, so we have to do something now. And due to that fact, we make the decision to use HVO, because HVO reduce emissions up to 90%. Actually, this year, I think Neste provide us an HVO with 93 greenhouse gas reduction, so that's really good, and we can use it in our vehicle. But the problem was 1.5 years ago, and that's about speed. No one knows if locomotives can run with that fuel. And when we ask the producer, MTU, Caterpillar and so on, they can't say us anything about that. So we made the decision as DB Group to make the testings by our own with 15 different loco types, with super large test fields. And the good news are there are no changes in investments in our locomotives necessary. It's a drop-in fuel. We can do it in our locomotives. And also we can mix it up with fossil fuel. That's especially really important because there are not that many fuel stations available where I can refuel my locomotives with HVO. So, and some other good aspects is they have the same forces, our locomotives, and of course the local emissions are dropping massively, especially with stoke particles and CO emissions. They are also going down, and also the noises of our locomotives. So really, really good aspects. And we will run in the future our locomotives with HVO to reduce our emissions until these modern technologies are on these states of that we can use it. And we are expecting that it takes another 5 or 10 years that they will be available for our market segment. So, and about speed, the last point before I finished, last year we used nearly half a million liters of HVO in our network. This year it will be 10 million liters of HVO, and these are more or less 20% of our entire fuel consumption in Germany of our company. So that's speed, 1 year, 20%.
So your HVO at the moment is 20%. Where would you like, or where are you planning to get that to? What time frame to increase that?
Yeah,
or is 20%, that's your target?
No,
you want to go further?
Actually, all our locos in Germany, and we are talking about more than 800 locomotives, they can run with HVO. And our plan is to also make the testing, especially for older locomotives, until the end of the year for whole Europe. So it's a little bit different. Rail freight locomotive used up to 40, 45 years. So when we are talking about climate neutrality until 2040, we have to deal with a part of our fleet also over 2030 with that. So, and this is a good option to not to take extra investments in our locomotives, but we can reduce our emissions by using HVO. Okay. So, and our goal is until the next 3 years to reach 50%. Okay. So, and after that, we will look which modern technology is upcoming and we can use.
I want to ask the audience, if you could raise your hand for me if you're within the sector and part of your business is using HVO or has dealings with HVO and it's something that you've looked at. Okay, okay, just a couple? Okay. The challenges, of course, as with any alternative fuel like that, are the volumes and where it all comes from and how you can get hold of enough and whether that is sustainable. Jakob, you wanted to come in there. Were you listening to Jörg?
Yes. I think it's important to realize that even if we would have a magic wand and wave it and by some magic, from tomorrow, all sales of new vehicles would either be zero emission or near zero. There are still enough fossil-based internal combustion vehicles on the roads today to smash through our climate targets. And we are now discussing, well, maybe we should stop selling these cars by maybe, hopefully, 2040. I think we need to realize that at some point, we're going to have to talk about demand reduction. And the slower we are in the decarbonization of the new trucks coming onto the market, well, the more leeway we will have with the demand reduction. But if there's no stopping the selling of the zero or near zero vehicles, then the entire policy will have to be draconian, volume-based measures. And nobody wants that, because we want to be able to move both people and goods all across Europe and across the world. We want to enable regions to make due of their competitive edge, that we are better at manufacturing certain things here and other things there. We have resources here and moving it there. We want transport, we want mobility. But if it doesn't decarbonize, the only viable alternative we have will be draconian measures to just reduce it. That is the physical reality. We cannot negotiate with physics.
I would love to know what Gerrit and Anna think about reducing the number of vehicles on the roads and the sales and the production in that way.
We will all be very hungry.
Very
hungry.
Hungry, yeah.
But you're looking. You say that's the only option as far as you're concerned. If we don't, I think Matthew, do you want to come in there? You look as if you were desperate to.
No. I was just reflecting that the way, for example, at the moment, the ambition is to get to 90% net zero vehicles 2040. That's, of course, in itself good ambition. What is good to note is that, first of all, there is that 10%, and there are solutions for that one as well. So, I mean, to my point earlier, there is also a solution which are very close to net zero over the life cycle, if you look at the well-to-wheels. And it's just an opportunity, I would say, to complement that. Clearly, I mean, what is happening now, that we are accelerating to create, whether it's electrification, whether it's hydrogen, but we should use all the measures available to get to that 100%.
Yeah, there is a clear support. I mean, we need to look at intermodal transport. I think there is more that could go on rail, no doubt. And I think there is at times here and there probably a truck sold that doesn't need to be sold. I mean, and it's sometimes sold in a shape and form that is complete nonsense. I mean, nobody needs a truck with 700 horsepower, 800 horsepower as a pure status symbol. So if we go and be more reasonable, I think we can do on the demand side a bit, for sure. But the big, and you touched the right point, it's like we need to decarbonize the current population, which goes with renewable fuels now. And the cycle time for renewable fuel is, otherwise cycle time, I mean when the molecule comes out of the air and is then back in the air. So when you look at this, the best cycle time has solar power going to a battery being used for urban transport. The cycle time is hours. It doesn't even involve a molecule, it just involves electrons. Yeah? No doubt, that's the best. Yeah? For city buses, for interurban distribution, this is the best. This is battery electric. But then we look at the longer haul transport, we just need to bear in mind that if the renewable fuels are not the choice, and we're going into hydrogen combustion, hydrogen fuel cell, which both of us are doing and the others are doing as well, we need to set the right boundary conditions. So I really like what you said. I mean, we need to have like draconic CO2 taxes on fuels with fossil origin. If that doesn't happen, it will never work, because you can push private households to buy electric cars because you make zero emission zones, but you cannot force long-haul heavy-duty truck fleets to buy electric trucks if that is the end of their family business. They will just sell the family business. Right? You cannot assume businesses to prevail and continue to exist with boundary conditions that don't make sense. So CO2 tax is a good idea. Clearly, penalties. We have penalties if we don't make our CO2 targets. You need to think about penalties along the entire value chain. Incentives and penalties. It can't be that only we have incentives. We don't even have incentives. Incentives have the customer, which is fine, I'm not complaining. But we have only penalties. No one else has penalties. We need to see penalties for member states who do not put up the required refueling infrastructure. If they don't put it up and a Volvo truck or an Iveco truck travels through this country, I'm not naming them, they are known for having a big mouth, wanting a lot and then not doing anything. Yeah? But if then a truck travels to these countries, what do? If you're running out of your battery charge or you're running out of your hydrogen or whatever we're going to use. So we need consistent, reliable, long-term policy making with draconic actions against fossil origin. And then purchase incentives for those which are renewable fuels. We need a competition between different technologies, not a single one, because that doesn't work for commercial. From 3.5 tons to 40 or 50 or 60 tons, different technologies are required. And we want competition, we need competition, and we need an intelligent set of frameworks that enables all of that. And then we have fun competing, and customers will get competitive vehicles at competitive prices. And fleets will continue to make money, and they do not get out of business.
That's a long list. That's a long wish list.
Yeah, it's not simple.
No, as we all know, otherwise we wouldn't be here discussing it. It would have been solved. I'm just going to throw a couple to the audience. Penalties on member states if they don't put in the recharging infrastructure. Who agrees? I love the way, Jakob, when you agree with something, you want everyone to know. Matti, that's not something for you?
Well, I was hesitating. It may be part of the solution. I think at the same time, no matter how much penalties, it takes time. To build infrastructure in the Europe-wide will take time, and we will need, whether it's different vehicle classes or whether it's different regions, it's a different thing in the central urban Europe or in some very lightly populated area, it will just take longer. So I think we need also then the solutions for those areas where it by nature takes longer.
It's interesting because you said, yes, it takes longer, and this is a process. But I think we all agreed earlier in the room, we need to go faster.
Yep.
So what's going to square that circle? What's going to make it happen faster?
I think we have today already a lot of the solutions on the table, and they are being developed. So I would say it's taking in use what we have and make sure that we deploy them in the segments where they are best fitted. And it can be then electrification in some, hydrogen in some. In some it can be drop-in renewable fuels. In the future it may then be e-fuels when that's available, but that takes time. So these are some of the solutions we have available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I would like to add the point on both sides, right and left, I think the major point is price. Because when I talk with people and said, okay, we want to be climate neutral and it's important, everything agree. But when we came to additional cost for everyone, then the discussions slow down. So, and if we really want to install that modern technology, use it to reach climate neutrality until 2050, like the European Green Deal says, we have to find a solution to come to minimize to the same cost level compared to fossil diesel. And that's, I think, the trigger to get to speed up in that point.
Okay, so Anna, how do you do that?
No, but I think we are talking a lot about, of course, that we have targets to be net zero by 2040, but that means, of course, that and that's global. So if we want to be net zero 2040 globally, we need to be at a very, very high level, and we have said we probably need to be at around 70% in Europe in order to be able to reach by 2030, in order to reach that target 2040 globally. So I think there is a need for really the horizon up to 2040, how to get there, and the framework around that in order to make that to happen. And I think not to just look at the 2040 horizon, but how do we take the steps next year, the year after that, to reach that? The trucks are there, but the customers right now don't know how will the road taxation look like in the different markets 2025, 2026, 2027, and that is the horizon they have in their purchases. So I think we are all into that. It's not about the regulation, of course we want to see it long term, but it's also about the near term now, setting the playing rules with a certain horizon going forward, and somehow some sort of consistency between markets as transports are cross-border by default, so to say. That's kind of nature of it.
I mean, Anna, are you almost suggesting that your customers need to take a best guess scenario and sort of think, I think this is going to happen, therefore this is where I'm going to put my money?
No, but today I think it's driven by very innovative and very, very proactive customers now that we are meeting, and they are taking the steps because they know that this is right and this will be right. Then, of course, it is very clear that we see the volumes now. Where are they coming on, for instance, battery electric? It is, of course, where the frameworks and the rules of the game are more clear. So
it makes it easier for them to work within that.
Then they can make their calculation, and we can make the transport as a service, or we can make, the financing can be more clear how this business case will look like.
Maybe just to chip in, we are living in and I'm trying not to generalize that necessarily, but on the consumer side, on the end consumer side of the goods that we transport, clothes, food, water, everything. We are having a consumer mentality which is fundamentally, in majority, completely dishonest. They preach and want green, but when they go to the supermarket, they buy the cheap stuff. And guess what? A transport of a bottle of water, it's just a few cents per bottle, yeah? Or take a car which gets delivered, it's a few euros, etc. And the issue we have is simply that everybody preaches the one but doesn't pay the other. So when you go to the grocery chains, Carrefour or so, and you want to have your hauler for Carrefour doesn't care about zero emissions. They say, I have my green ticket here and I need to fulfill a certain tick box. Other than this is what I pay you per ton kilometer, no matter how you do this, right? No matter. And if the fleet can't meet the price point, they're not the ones hauling the goods. End of story. And if you come and say, oh, I have this fantastic Volvo electric or this Iveco electric, but I need like 10 cents more, 15 cents more, they say, go to hell. That's reality. They go to hell because the end customers don't pay. So we are living in a society where on the one side everybody wants, but nobody wants to pay. And when we go for drastic taxation on fossil origin, we will see a massive boost, not like we had in the last few years, but you will percentage points of inflation over years on consumer goods because of massive price increases of transport. And maybe that's what it takes. But I just want to be aware that this is a way that comes at cost, and society will pay for it, because in the end it will be a train, it will be a truck that delivers your food and your yogurt cup, and you will pay more. And I think I'm willing to do that. I think there's a majority willing to do that, but we need to live with the consequences. And the majority, if they always pivot towards cheap is cool, it's not going to work.
And I'm going to throw in here, of course, we are living through a cost of living crisis at the moment. There are other cost pressures other than just making that decision. Jakob, I'll come to you in a moment. I just want to ask the room who agrees with Gerrit there. Actually, it's just going to come down to cost for the consumer, and that's where... Just one gentleman, no one else? Okay, yeah, all right, okay. All very reluctant there, but yeah, it's the cost. How do you deal with that then?
Well, Sweden has the highest carbon tax in the world. And we enabled it in the early 90s. And whenever we increased it, we did what we called a green tax change. For every Swedish crown of increased carbon tax, we decreased the income tax, which enables lower income households to manage the increased costs of transportation because they pay lower taxes. And I think, if we just look at food, if you look at how large portion of your disposable income is for food, that is actually at a historical low. I think cost of food actually has to increase. Because much of agriculture is fossil-based in the production and of the transportation. There's no way around this is going to have to cost more. This will, of course, have social consequences, and that needs to be balanced with other policy. We cannot slow down climate policy because of the consequences for food prices. Because long-term, the big risk for agriculture is climate change, not climate policy. Because climate change will reduce the amount of arable land. We are right now on track to 2.7 degrees of climate change. That makes a fifth of the world population, 2 billion people. The area of where they live will be inhabitable, not inhabitable. They will need to move. And you will no longer be able to have agriculture there. This is the big risk for agriculture, not climate policy.
Can we move on to feedstocks? Because this is a big challenge, I know, for all of you, as to where it all comes from, where the energy comes from, where your feedstocks come from, and then actually the competition for that green energy as well, as to whether it's for the green electricity, whether it is for the oil, for the locomotives. How do you deal, first of all, should we talk about green electricity? How much there is, Anna? It's all very well for a consumer to think, oh, it's an electric truck, but the challenge is making sure that that electricity is green. So how do you deal with the challenge of ensuring that it is? And then we'll look at other alternative fuels as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure as a truck manufacturer that we can ensure that the electricity is green, that is coming out of the lines. But I think, of course, we are very much interested in expanding green electricity. And this is, of course, part of, and I think we have said that many times, that we believe that countries in Europe especially have not invested enough in the balance sheet of the countries. And that includes the electricity grid and the power grid and the possibility to cope with the future requirements. So I think that is, of course, a necessity. I think this, together with our customers, we are discussing a lot, but we also see a lot of initiatives on wind power, solar farms, etc., where, as you say, you actually try to generate a very big part of your own energy for the transportation as a customer yourself. And that is, of course, possible in certain operations, and in others it's not possible. But I mean, here is one of the things where I think, as our policymakers, needs to make steps forward, and that is, again, the availability of green energy, and that the power grid is able to transform and transmit the electricity as we need in the future.
I'll go in depth on the infrastructure needed actually for that in a moment. But your first point, and I totally take your point, as a truck manufacturer, it's not up to you to work out the grid. However, you've got customers who are choosing electrification because they see it as a green option. Therefore, there's a whole part of the ecosystem that actually you have to...
But I think, again, coming back, these customers now that we are discussing, they are quite mature. It's not like they believe that they have green energy or not green energy. They know if they have green energy or not today. They have secured their electricity agreements. They have their own electricity sources. So, I mean, they are quite mature. Then I would say some of the markets, of course, have a better prerequisites for this than others, with more availability of green energy. But again, it comes to investing in this infrastructure, and I think the energy crisis that we had during the last winter has put the finger on this quite clearly.
Very, very much.
I think the customers who buy today electric trucks from us, they are not environmental extremists, not at all. Most of them are curious. They want to understand how electric works, and they want to be ready when it scales, to be ready and be ahead. And the other ones, and these are the ones who buy 1 to 5 trucks. And then you have the ones who buy the 50s, the 100s, or the 1000 that you sold to a concrete maker, or the things that we are negotiating. Those have a controlled environment of energy, because they know this is green, it's available, the grid holds, I can charge, and I can operate these trucks. I have not seen anybody buying a truck without controlling the infrastructure as well at this stage, because it's just, I mean, to the grid. I mean, to charge a truck that has 500 or 750 kilowatt hours, 10 times a Tesla, and you just use a 350 kilowatt charger, not even a megawatt charger, just the highest power commercially available charger, 350 kilowatt. And you have 10 trucks coming to the same charger, and you have 10 chargers. This is 3.5 megawatt you need to charge. This is a small power plant. And if you have 50 trucks charging at the same time at the truck stop, you need an actually power plant just to charge these trucks. Because if you put them on the grid, the lights and all the villages around the truck stop will go off. But this is not an excuse not to do this. So we need to look into the grid, we need to enter grid capacity. And what we probably need is a heat map of Europe. Where is grid available and where is not? Where is battery scaling and where is hydrogen as a buffer, energy buffer, where you buffer the electron and the molecule? Yeah? Where is that more? And where are regions where we need renewable fuels simply because there will neither be the molecule nor the electron? Yeah?
And that it needs to be done along all the main routes of
transport corridors, yeah.
And also the transport corridors now, but the world is changing, where the transport corridors may be in 5-10 years' time. Maybe more things will go via rail or not, maybe different markets. You're thinking, no, it's not. They're not.
No, when you
change.
said transport corridors will not change unless the tectonic plates of Europe would move.
Well, okay.
But no, this is where I got stuck. What you mean is the intermodal transport between rail and road, and that's true. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Did you want to come back in on that? Yeah.
If I may, just one thought adding on that, because I think I was thinking of the big picture and thinking of that challenge, let's say 2040, for example, and the current estimation of what the fossil fuel use would be. It's probably something like 5 billion if you don't do anything, tons of oil equivalent. And in a way, exactly the pieces you listed, we need the electrification. That has the potential, depending how quickly we can ramp up renewable energy production, build the infrastructure, that can be a part of that. And yes, we need the renewable fuels. We're focusing on those where we really can get the carbon intensity low, the waste and residues. It can be hundreds of millions of tons. That's again part of the puzzle. And yes, we need the hydrogen. We need the e-fuels. That's how we built that puzzle. But we can, again, when you look at it and you look a bit at what is possible and how much is there available infrastructure and the speed, we need all of these pieces to meet that ambition.
And you mentioned feedstock, and I think we will live through a very exciting, I find it exciting, diversity of origins of molecules and electrons. For example, in the south of Italy, it will be probably solar and a bit of wind that produces green whatever. In the Scandinavia, it will be less sun and more wind, and maybe other ways of producing it green. And then you have the French who will use their nuclear power plants in every aspect once their rivers have water again. Yeah? And I think we will see every molecule and electron coming off and on the grid at different costs. Because if you use the nuclear power plant in France to produce hydrogen, it comes at no cost, and then you distribute it, and suddenly you have hydrogen at the pump for €2 at 700 bar, or €3 at 700 bar. If you do it in Switzerland with water power, and you do it super green with that, you pay probably then at the pump €15 per kilogram green hydrogen at 700 bar. So we have a huge disparity around the prices of the molecules and the electrons, depending on the origin and the individual potentials of every member state. And here is an interesting competition coming, how this will actually level out and how you will live with it, because molecules and electrons have no color, pink, green, gray, purple, whatever. Molecules don't care, and guess what? The fuel cell doesn't care either, and the combustion engine doesn't care either. It just wants the chemical composition. They don't know the color. And I think that's an interesting area to regulate, an interesting area to incentivize, to penalize. How do we actually get enough molecules and electrons, green, renewable, into the ecosystem?
The only person who would care is the person paying the bill, then. How do you do it?
There's an expression that politicians shouldn't pick winners and losers. And while I do agree that politicians shouldn't pick the winners, I do think that we need to pick the losers, in the sense the fossil-based fossil fuels. And then I don't believe in the sort of silver bullet mentality that it should all be battery electric, it should all be hydrogen, it should all be bio-based. That we need to make it economically viable for the industry to try stuff out, see what works. But they need to not to only do that out of their own goodwill. It needs to also pay the bill. That was not intended for that pun. But also a final thing that needs to be mentioned is that we need to also talk more about modal shift. Long haul with on-road needs to actually decrease. We maybe need more short haul, but we need less long haul. Here we need to move more goods by rail and by ship. And then we need more investments in the infrastructure needed to move the containers between the rail sector and the shipment sector and the road sector to make that easier. And we need to look at the combined transport directive, which can, to some extent, incentivize this. These are all things that we need to do to make that happen.
A total shift in mindset for a lot of people. Let's open it out to questions. Gentlemen there, if we can get a microphone to you, sir. There we go. Lovely. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself first, and if there is a particular person you want to direct your question to.
Okay, thank you. I'm John Cooper. I speak for the fuels industry, Fuels Europe and Konkawi. And actually, I do have a question, a couple of, just a minute of context first. First of all, I'd like to say to Gerrit, actually, we also feel quite punished and under pressure as an industry. And we've been very clear to our members that actually our trajectory does have to go down towards zero by 2050. That's what the future of the fuels, the fossil fuels refining industry looks like. But actually, the members of our association, that includes, of course, Neste is a very important member, pioneering actually in a lot of these different fields. We're already making very substantial investments. The question is really about how we support going faster with policy. Because at the moment, as we have that conversation with our members, what we're seeing is, and I hate to mention the US and the IRA, we have an incentive-based system in the US. The signals in Europe tend to be more on the negative side. We've got 2 regulations now for cars and trucks that essentially ban combustion of anything, including renewable molecules, because that's actually what the way the regulation is written. And that itself suggests a forward demand in the long term of zero. And it's difficult to make billion-dollar investments when the long-term demand is actually zero. So back to your question, you were talking earlier about the taxation level on fossil fuels. We've supported for a long time lower taxation on renewables. We actually do collect huge amounts of money on fossil, and we do have an ETS system coming in for, which is actually your draconian measure. My question to you is, what more can we do to support a strategy for the liquid fuel transition? We don't have a strategy. It's not recognized in the Net Zero Act as a strategic industry for transition, despite the fact that 98% of what moves in Europe moves on a liquid fuel today. So my question to you is, what more can we do to develop a strategy in Europe to help more investments in renewable molecules?
Okay, thank you. So a lot of nodding, by the way, when you mentioned the IRA and people talk about the different ways of tackling this. Over to you, Jakob.
So two answers. The first is that the American federal level it's a bit easier for them to move on tax policy and investments. It's much difficult for the European level to do so. It's very difficult to raise our own revenues and therefore be able to spend revenues. It's more difficult to lend money, and if we would make constitutional changes that would change this, then of course this would be easier and I would be in favor of doing so. Second answer is actually quite a bit about social policy. In Sweden, we have been pioneering on a mandate to blend in renewables into the fuel mix. Almost every party supported this policy in the previous term. But then, as it started to kick in, the successive increase of the blending in, when you blend in something that is more expensive than the thing you're replacing, well, that of course increases the cost. This had social consequences for voters who were on deciding, should I vote for centrist parties, center-left, center-right, or should I vote for the far right? The risk of losing voters to the far right changed the policy of center-left and center-right in Sweden to abandon this blending in. So we cannot only have climate policy, we also need social policy to enable those voters who might be affected by the climate policy to embrace it. And politicians also need to hear from the industry that this is required, not only for green extremists like me, they also need to hear it from the industry.
Anna, you were nodding at that as well, or nodding not so much necessarily in agreement, but just an awareness.
No, but I just recognize the discussion on the Swedish situation right now. I think that's what is absolutely ongoing. No.
More questions?
Just one comment perhaps on John. I think it's a good observation that if I look at the proposal now for the heavy duty sector, that it would probably be very helpful to recognize that there are let's say either net zero, very close to net zero solutions available based on liquid fuels, and they can, for example, be complementary to what is today already in that proposal. And that's at the moment not in there. So that could be a way to actually create a complementary solution.
Just to get, I don't want to talk about penalties all the time, otherwise I look like a teacher. Yeah? But I mean, the point is, we're the only ones who have penalties. Basta. And when you look at the automotive industry, I give you the exact example. We are measured in CO2 per ton kilometer. Super precise. And if we miss 1 gram average target, CO2 per ton kilometer, we get fined per year, depends on vehicle class and year, whatever, between 3,000 and 4,000 euro for every truck we sell. So every 10,000 trucks we sell, it's 40 million fines per year per gram. So you never miss a gram. If you miss, right? And if you really miss, you miss 3, 4, 5 grams. And for every 10,000 trucks you sell, it's easily 200 million in fines per year. And this is just heavy-duty trucks, by the way. This is just on the heavy-duty side. And this corresponds, I'm just talking for ourselves, this wipes out, if we really miss, the entire net profit of the group. And that's the end of it. That's 35,000 jobs lost. Bye-bye. My revenues are as big as probably the average oil company's net profit. And if we then do the math, how much of that is at risk if certain things are not made, this is completely out of proportion. Completely out of proportion. If you count all the profits that Volvo, they're the gold standard, yeah? Volvo, Daimler, you count them all together and you count of the net, what's the net profit of the truck industry? And then you count the net profit of every other industry along the value chain. We are chicken shit. But we get all the penalties. We get all the regulations. We get all the targets. This is inconsistent. But if you kill the consuming engines, kill the consuming vehicles, or you're creating only a survival of 2, that's also not what you want, right? You want competition. You want coordinated, healthy competition. But what we need is enabling conditions, like Anna said. And enabling conditions, sorry, is brutal. If you want to develop a heavy-duty truck electric platform, ground up electric, you need to invest 1 billion. That's multiple times what we have as a net profit. And we are the smallest ones, okay? I think if everybody along the value chain would invest multiple times their net profit, we would be in a different pace. And then we can talk about speed. I want more speed. But targets don't change reality. If you want to run a marathon and the only target you give yourself while you train are your feet, you're going to fall on your face in the first meters. You need to give targets to all pieces of your body if you want to run a marathon. It's complicated, it's training, and you need to walk before you run, yeah? And then you need to run short before you run long. And we are living again through a time where people say, look, tougher targets and they're going to run harder. We have the technology, the truck industry, we have delivered, we have all the vehicles, we had them all at the IAA. It is not going to happen. 30% by 2030, 50, 100, 120%, maybe someone comes up with that idea. I don't know, to be carbon neutral maybe. We can do whatever you want. But the point is, if you forget about the entire value chain and you don't penalize the entire value chain, it's not going to happen, and we will not even have 15% by 2030. In reality. Then we all get fines, we get sued, out of business, 100,000 of jobs are lost, and people and PhDs in Brussels wonder, like, what did we do wrong 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Raise your hand if you agree with Gerrit on that one. Just... can I come back to you, Jakob, on that? Because Jakob's face, while you, for those who can't see, it was the line about targets not working. You were like, and I couldn't quite work out what was going on in your mind at that point, but you were very much listening in on that. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
No, I fundamentally agree in the sense that we cannot only have targets on the fleet manufacturers. That cannot be the only solution. Of course, that's the legislation we're talking about right now, but obviously that cannot be the only solution. We need to make sure that the market conditions are such that that €1 billion investment is a no-brainer because of the market calculations for the future. That there will be such demand by the transport buyers that they will not be able to afford running their trucks in the future if they don't make an order and stand in line to buy that electric truck, and that there will be such demand for the near zero renewables fuels. There need to be customers for that, and there need to be investment certainty for that. And that is of course, my responsibility.
Yeah. I'm very conscious of time. Anyone else in the audience that would like to put a direct question? If not, I'm going to go to a final thought from all of you. And what I would like to do is ask you to leave this audience at the end of our very first panel, bearing in mind we will talk more about regulation later. But at the end of this first panel, what would you like this audience to take with them when they go and have their cup of coffee? So one thought that you would like them to take away from our discussions today. Gerrit, I'm going to start with you. Just a very short thought, something just to put in their minds. Not that you're a teacher and that you just want penalties.
Be balanced and be fair and be realistic. That's it. I mean, I think automotive deserved to be punished. We understood, we changed, we are ready. But now the other pieces need to follow. Otherwise, there is no change.
So you are looking at the entire value chain, the whole thing together. Widen the context, widen the scope. Anna?
No, very much along those lines. I think also that we need to look at, okay, what is the framework now for the next coming 4 to 5, and then we need to have a longer horizon, of course, on that. But what is the framework now for the transport buyer buying a truck? How should they be able to calculate the cost of ownership for that ownership of that vehicle, including a residual value, most likely, that they would like to have after 5 years. So, I mean, it is important to have the framework and the enabling conditions now on a longer horizon than election periods.
Okay, more certainty, more framework.
Yes.
Yeah. Jörg?
So it's easy. Please stop talking about climate protection and start acting. The clock is ticking.
It's a very good point to leave everyone with. You would echo that, I know.
Yes, but we shouldn't only view this as climate policy. We should also view this as industrial policy. Because if we don't act, if innovation and investments are not made here in Europe, they will be made in other parts of the world, and we will be lagging behind. Because politics will change, consumer demand will change, and I think Europe will prosper if we lead the green transition.
Matti?
I would say we talked a lot about the challenges. Also, we shared the need to move this direction. I would leave it by finding a good framework which steers the different solutions we need. I'm also then optimistic that we have, in a way, all the solutions. We just need to make sure that all of them can be developed so that we get to our 2040 target.
I think it's a nice one just to end the audience with. Optimistic that all the solutions are there. We just need to bring them all together. Would you agree? The solutions are there? Well, I see some nods. I see no hands. So maybe, but I can see John is nodding, very, very much so. Ladies and gentlemen of our panel, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. The first panel this afternoon was very much an overview. We're now going to dive more into the regulation. And I'm very conscious we did talk a lot about the regulation in our first discussion, but these things will always overlap. So we will talk about the regulation, but we will probably go into different areas as well. So we're looking at the regulations and the standards. We've put together a really interesting panel for you from different parts of the industry and from different geographies as well, to talk about what people are doing within their own area. So if I could introduce my panelists, and if you could save your welcome applause for the end for me. First of all, we have the permanent representative of the Czech Republic to the EU, Deputy Ambassador. Very pleased to say we have Lucia Štkova. with us today. We also have Jacob Tana from Scania, the head of sustainable transport. We have Folco Ciulli from the regional government of Lombardy, Green Deal and economic advisor, also here as part of the Automotive Region Alliance, although not speaking on its behalf. Niels Dressel from Mala International, head of the EU office. And we also have Katia Wujurek from Neste. If you would like to come and join us here on stage. Thank you very much. Same as our earlier panel, we've not asked for long presentations. We've simply asked our experts here to give a short positioning statement to explain how they see themselves and their particular area and what is important to them. So, Lucia, would you prefer to sit there or would you like to come here?
Or maybe I will come there. Thanks. If I may. So thanks a lot, and I'm really appreciated the pronunciation of my name.
Okay.
It was almost perfect, so thank you for that. Anyway, thank you for having me and for giving me the opportunity to share the Czech perspective and our concerns about decarbonization of the road transport, which has been one of the pressing issues for some time already. Being Deputy Permanent Representative, it means the representative of the Czech Republic in the Coreper 1, I have the pleasure to closely follow the negotiation process of EU legislation in transport sectors, such as CO2 emission standards for cars and vans, as well as for heavy-duty vehicles, AFIR, new Euro 7 emission standards, inclusion of road transport into EU ETS or ETS2, refuel EU aviation, fuel EU maritime, and the others. At the same time, the automotive industry is very important for the Czech economy. It contributes to around 10% of GDP and gives jobs to around 150,000 people directly in factories and to additional 400,000 workers throughout the whole value chain. So we are speaking about more than a million of people out of less than 7 million people in productive age. Another interesting fact is that the Czech Republic, is the second biggest car manufacturer in the world. It's per capita, but still. So no one can be really surprised that or why car-related EU legislation is so important and sensitive, politically sensitive for the Czech Republic, as it has direct impact on our economy and employment. At the same time, I have to underline that we support the general objectives of the European Green Deal, and we are very well aware of the necessity to reduce the CO2 emissions from all sectors of the economy. And of course, road transport and its transformation towards the clean mobility is no exception. And I came here, to be honest, to listen carefully to you and be happy to hear your concrete ideas and comments you might have on these very important issues. And then I can come back to the Council and maybe to share your ideas with our colleagues during the negotiation process.
Thank you. Lucia, thank you very much. Thank you. Jacob,
I will do exactly as the.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, hello, good afternoon. Thank you, and thank you to Neste for organizing the event and inviting us to speak. I think, to start, so we need to do a lot in order to do what's required of us in the Paris Agreement and to do our part in reducing CO2 emissions from transport. And to do that, we have to massively scale and keep developing new technology, zero-emission technology like battery electric vehicles, fuel cells, and so on. But we also have to massively scale the use of renewables in already existing technology and to further develop that technology to become even more efficient. And to be able to push both of these sort of aspects of decarbonized transport, we have to work on 3 different arenas. And policy has to support all 3 of these arenas. We have to work on a technology push, where these new technologies are put into the market by manufacturers like Scania and our colleagues in the industry. We have to work on a customer pull for these new solutions, but also for other decarbonized solutions, as might be the case with renewable diesel like HVO or biomethane. We also have to work in an arena of ecosystem partnerships. And we have to, in some way, make it more comfortable for companies to make strategic bets together. And I think from a policy perspective, the technology push is sort of there. The CO2 standard in Europe pushes us as a manufacturer to produce zero-emission vehicles and to make more efficient combustion engines. What I feel might be lacking a little bit is support for the second two. And we need to introduce this well-to-wheel perspective somewhere in the ecosystem, somewhere in the value chain. And perhaps it's in this customer pull that we should put more effort. So if we could convincingly put incentives, possibly taxes on the fossil part, where transport is demanded, it would sort of automatically create that direct customer pull for our customers to purchase more CO2-friendly solutions, which in itself would pull technology from us and our partners. And it would also inspire ecosystem partnerships. Because to be honest, the only way to really scale decarbonized solutions here and now is to make sure that there's a demand for those types of solutions. The companies buying transport solutions from us and delivering that transport service to the ones who need that transport service are the only ones that can really make the change. And unless we can convincingly show them that, and in a way where they can trust it, so in terms of longevity, consistency, and so on, both in solution and policy, that change won't happen. They will not have the courage required or the confidence required to invest in those new solutions. So I think that's where we stand. In general, of course, have to support tough targets and welcome the Fit for 55 package of things. But as an industry and as an ecosystem, have to really scale this in a pace quicker than what we're managing today. Thank you.
Jacob, thank you very much. Thank you. Volker, would you, up to you.
I think I can stay here.
Okay.
You don't mind?
No, not at all, not at all.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, we have one dream, technological neutrality. But we also have a second dream. We want EU independence in raw material. But we also have a third dream. We want our automotive industry remain the most competitive industry in the world. And we have a general dream that this could be reached, that this could lead Europe to carbon neutrality faster than the actual position of the European institutions, letting the industry competitive. And when I say, I'm sorry, I was a bit sarcastic with someone that talked before in the first panel, but you know, when I say we, because I'm here talking on, I should say, on behalf of 1,000 companies in Lombardy, 50,000 workers, 20 billions of turnover only in Lombardy, and with the actual proposal of the Commission, we risk to lose in 5 years 30,000 jobs. That's real life. That's healthiness for people. We have to consider these also. So that's my introductory remarks. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have to say, I'm really pleased that both yourself and Lucia are here on the panel to give that perspective from different regions as well. Niels, would you?
Yes. So hello, everyone. Indeed, many thanks for the opportunity to speak to you here today and reflect a bit the view from the automotive supplier industry. I just say a few words on Mahle, because this might not be well known to most of you, what we do. We are a global automotive supplier. We focus on powertrain and thermal management solutions. And here we take a system approach, so we can take a look at the whole picture and see how the powertrain fits in the vehicle. And this allows us also to see the benefits and problems of these technologies. What is the role of automotive suppliers in this discussion? Automotive suppliers are one of the contributors of innovation to the industry. They provide a major share of research and innovation, and they bring to the market new technologies, low carbon technologies. And for Mahle, just last year, we registered over 400 new patents, and 70% of those were for alternative powertrains. So it really shows you the dynamic of this industry. When it comes to the topic at hand, the role of regulation, I think we have already heard today that road transport is the beating heart of our economy. So when we do changes to the legislation, we are basically doing an open heart surgery. So there's very little room for errors. And we also heard a lot about that the future looks very diverse when it comes to powertrain solutions, when it comes to how we can decarbonize road transport. So this is something that the regulation has to reflect, and at the same time it also has to really speed up the phasing out of fossil fuels so that we can reach our overall climate targets.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Niels. Thank you. Kasia.
I get up as well. Lucy, you said something really nice. I'm here to listen. We're here to listen from each other and to learn. And when you listen and you learn and you act from that base of hearing many different perspectives, then that's when we really take good decisions. We heard a lot in the first panel, and I think the one thing that we heard is that there was a pretty much basic consensus about what we need to achieve. There was an understanding that this industry is critical because we move the goods, the everyday goods from A to B. There's an understanding that that takes a lot of energy. There is the understanding that that creates a lot of carbonization that we need to take out, carbon that we need to take out. But it's really the how. How do we make sure that what we want to achieve, we get this in a way that we take the right decision today? And that's where legislation comes in. And that's why I thought it was so powerful, because the moment you put legislation out, you're making choices for something and against something. And we want to make sure that when the timing comes of the legislation, all different voices are heard. You said it so nicely. You represent the people here. You bring. So I think it's so important when we take decisions that we bring all of these voices in, of the people we represent, of the society we represent, listen to all of this, learn from each other, and challenge each other as well, and sometimes really rethink on our basic. If we get this wrong from a legislative point of view, we would miss the chance to get this right. We miss the chance to really go away from the big thing that we're trying to get here, to decarbonize the sector. That's what we said. That's the big thing. That's where everyone was in common. Or, as we would say it at Neste, we would not create a healthier planet for our children. We would do exactly the opposite. We take decisions that would have the opposite effect. If we limit through legislation solutions and technologies that can be solutions already today, but can also have also their space of being solutions out there tomorrow, we also don't really accomplish what we came here together for. And that's for me a big one, it was already touched a little bit before, you said it so nicely, if after 2040 we leave room for fossils still to be used, I think we missed out something. It's a minor big details that we should get right already now. Instead, I really hope that we take decisions really driven by outcome, and the outcome is to decarbonize the sector while keeping it alive, while making sure that people can work, while making sure it's competitive, while making sure it stays alive. by ensuring we move fossils out of the system at a certain time, or use only the fossil systems in the areas we need them. And by looking in ways of really calculating CO2 in a smart way, in a way that we don't only look at a certain percentage of the tail what comes out, but we really look smartly, is it really the best solution out here to look at that way, or are there other ways? I'm going to end my opening by saying the following. Tomorrow marks 2 months at the company of Neste. And I say this many times internally to my beautiful colleagues that are partly sitting here as well. I really came here by choice because I believe in the power that renewables can play in this world, whether it's in road transportation or in different other sectors. And I'm convinced that we can bring a lot to the table, and we are a solution already that is out there today. So I wish we go into a very discussion, we challenge each other, we learn and listen from each other, because I think that is so important in everything that we do, in order to make sure that we get this right, we decarbonize this sector fast and furious.
Thank you very much, Katja. Thank you. It is a very, very, very good point. It is learning and listening and getting the right solution. So the title of this panel, how can the CO2 standards regulation deliver a renewable HGT sector? I'm going to pose the panel's title to you as a question, and I would like just a one-word answer. We'll go into the further discussions later. So can the proposed current CO2 standards regulation deliver the green sector that is needed? Can they do it? Oh, Lucia's face is a picture. She's really thinking there. I'm not going to come to you yet. Hang on to that one. So, and I will come to you last, Katja, Niels. Yes or no, can they, as they stand at the moment?
Hardly, I would say.
Hardly.
Yes, but not in a European way.
Okay.
I don't think I can say anything else than yes. Because we're the legislator, so I will be. Okay. Maybe if you get later over a cup of coffee, then. Jacob.
Not on its own. So making one word out of
okay. So in effect, that is a no, because as standing at the moment. Okay.
Not on its own.
Katja.
Ambition, yes. The details, minor details, big details are missing.
Okay. I'm going to ask the same question to the room, and I know that it's a very tricky one, so I'll put you in it's complicated. But yes, the standards are as they are at the moment, can deliver the green sector, can deliver, the regulations can work, basically. What do we think? Yes, please raise your hand. No, what was that? Yes, but
we are together, so it's, you know.
A straight no, please let me get out of here now. Okay, we have one hand there. We have two hands, okay. And it's complicated, they need some work. Yeah, okay, well, there we go, yeah. So now we're going to work out where the work is. just that little thorny issue there, where is the work? Katja, do you want to start? Where's the work? What are the limitations of the regulations, and what would you like to see? Throw them out in bite-sized pieces, and we'll check with the room and see what sort of response you get.
I would really try to make a link from the panel one that we heard, because I come back to what I said in the opening. I think the beauty of the panel one of the first panel was that despite having different positions, everyone agreed we want to decarbonize the sector, and actually everyone said all technologies are welcome and should be considered. I think we have heard this actually from everyone. And today, as the legislation states today, that is not the case. Today, it does not really distinguish whether it's a fossil fuel or it's a renewable fuel, because it measured it in a certain way. So to find a room in the legislation to consider what is already out there solution and make sure that it becomes part as well of the future, because renewable fuels have a solution already today, but they will also have the role in the future. And really going back a little bit, always back to this big question, what are we really trying to achieve? We want to decarbonize the sector, and we should let the technologies almost coexist. I think that's the key one, and that's what we'd love to see mirrored as well in the legislation.
Okay, so more technology neutral, a wider range of technologies. I'm pretty sure the room is going to agree. Is there anyone who doesn't agree with that and would like to take that point further?
I see someone not.
Where? Oh, where did you see? I didn't know. Oh, no. Okay, that's your limitation to the regulations. That basically, it's cutting off too many avenues, if I can paraphrase. Jacob.
So, at Scania, we've set science-based targets.
Sorry, science-based?
Science-based targets for climate reduction.
Yeah.
So it means that we've set targets that are in line with what the Paris Agreement requires of us. In those targets, we have to look at real carbon cuts. So that means looking at it from a well-to-wheel perspective. Obviously, the CO2 standard does not. Does it have to? I don't know. But in and of itself, it cannot deliver a decarbonized transport system because it doesn't look at where the energy comes from. In and of itself, it can deliver a transport system with lower tailpipe emissions, certainly. And additionally, somewhere in the legislative framework, we have to make sure that it's profitable, sustainable, and that there's business benefit in our customers, the transporters, and the transport buyers in choosing transport solutions that decrease well-to-wheel emissions. And obviously, renewable fuels are such solutions, as is green electricity.
Yeah. So bringing in the well-to-wheel calculation for that. I'll come to you two at the end, if I may, to get the geographical perspective as well. Niels.
So maybe I have to point out some also positive aspects of the CO2 regulation. I mean, we have the recognition of hydrogen combustion engine as a zero-emission technology, which is very important because this technology can bring CO2 reductions relatively quickly to the market. As an addition, we don't have a minus 100% target set so far, which is also an acknowledgement, I think, of the need for more openness. But of course, it also limits the flexibility you will have in the end. And we have new instruments. We have an emission trading system for the road transport sector that gives important price signals. Unfortunately, they will come in very late, and they will most likely not be very strong. But it is a huge change from where we were before the Green Deal. So they are important. A lot of the puzzle elements needed are there, but not really where we need them, at the level we need them. And then what is really still missing is the recognition of the fuel side. So this we unfortunately don't see it in the legislation.
So echoing what you've heard here. Lucia, I'll leave you to last, if I may. Volker, tell me the limitations of the regulations. I'm going to ask for the positives as well, by the way, but go with the limitations first.
Well, the first thing is I couldn't agree more with what Katja said. I totally agree with this technological neutrality and the possibility to study, to innovate in Europe. Second thing is that we need some instrument, concrete instrument, to do this transition. The world has changed in the last 2 years. When this commission started, when this financial framework started, the world was different. We started with this Just Transition Fund for decarbon and not decarbonization in some countries. Now we really need a Just Transition Fund for decarbonization, but to help industries to being stronger and more decarbonized. And that is also the reason why from Sweden to Italy, from Spain to Czech Republic, we gathered 34 regions in Europe from 8 countries and with very strong automotive industries in order to advocate on these. The two pillars are, the main pillar is we want to decarbonize the sector. But the two concrete pillars are we want to do that with technological neutrality and with the help of some instrument by the Commission. And also, one thing, I put it on the table, look at the work program of Horizon Europe. The transport part, the part devoted to development of engine, and there is nothing more than electricity and now hydrogen. There is no e-fuel, no biofuel. You cannot do in Europe research that is not in electricity or hydrogen. That's something harming our situation.
So again, echoing more technology, more types of technology needed. Lucia, I will come to you about the positives, but what do you see, and I'm going to phrase it carefully for you, but what do you see as the challenges with the legislation as proposed at the moment, the regulations that we have?
Maybe I will start from a little bit different angle,
Sure.
because maybe you would be interested in where we are in the Council on this concrete proposal, HDV proposal. We are still at the initial stage because a lot of member states, they still don't have their national position. So we don't expect much progress before the summer break. The Swedish presidency, they are planning to have a policy debate at the Environmental Council in June, so the ministers will have a chance to discuss it, in fact, for the first time. Then we will have the Spanish presidency. You know that they will have election on 23rd of July. So let's see what their priorities will be afterwards and how far they will be able to get this proposal. I suppose we will go a little bit further to the common position in the Council. But if we have a position in the Council, difficult to say, because the positions, the preliminary positions are really complicated. They are not, let's say, very close to each other. We are not close to each other. So I don't expect the easy negotiations. It's similar with the CO2 emissions standard for cars and vans. So this one will be, difficult as well. Of course, also depends on the German position. And as regards the Czech position and the challenges we have, it's a music to my ears, speaking about technological neutrality, because it's the one or very strong point of our country, because we think that the car manufacturers should have all the options on the table, and it's for them to choose the best strategy how to decarbonize. Of course, the hydrogen and electrification, it's the way forward, but still you should have all the possible options open, and that's why we are because the Commission in their impact assessment, they analyzed two options, the carbon correction factor and carbon credits. At the end, they didn't include these two in the proposal itself. But now in the Council with some member states, we are thinking about introducing one of these elements during the negotiation process. So let's see how many countries will be in the same camp and how strong we will be to be able to push it through. And then the ambition and the targets. For us, they are too ambitious. So we will argue for lowering the targets, and not because we are not ambitious or we don't want to be ambitious, but because we really want to be realistic and we want to fulfill the promises in the future. So that's basically the Czech position and where we are in the Council just now.
Difficult, I know, with you sort of taking on both positions, but just to be clear, the targets, as far as you're concerned, are too ambitious.
Too ambitious.
Not because you are not ambitious, but because they are unrealistic. Anyone like to come in on that? Niels, yeah.
I'm happy to. I mean, in the first panel, I had a lot of agreement that the industry is open for very ambitious targets, which is certainly true if the enabling conditions are right. But if you look now, you move up from 30% to 45%, which is already a huge increase in 2030. And there are a lot of assumptions going into these targets that are at least questionable on the side of the Commission impact assessment. There's a much higher assumption of how many efficiency improvements you can still achieve with the traditional combustion engine vehicles, which would result in a much higher amount of zero-emission vehicles you need to comply with this target. If you look at the R4 targets, they will only be in place really at the year when the vehicle manufacturers already have to comply with the targets. So this is a very risky situation for them. And what happens if we go to very high targets and the conditions are not there? This will result indeed in higher costs for transport and higher costs for consumers in the end. So this is, especially the 2030 target, is a very, very difficult proposal at the moment.
But I mean, as you mentioned from the first panel, there was consensus that things have to be pushed on, and maybe one of the only ways of doing that was, I think, the word from Jakob was draconian, and he probably would have used that in many different ways. I think he was talking about penalties at the time, but he probably would have said that about targets as well. Katja, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, it was interesting because I knew that, or I was waiting a bit for the question, what's actually good about it, because I think you're going to ask for that. And when you said that they are actually too ambitious, my first reaction was that I would have said this as something good, because I think, it's obviously how do you then implement it, but I think the fact, first of all, that we go through this process is already a good thing. I think it's good that the legislation is being revised. I perceived it as something good, but now I think the discussions, can we live up to this, but that the ambition has been even raised to it, so what solutions can get you there. And I think the third thing that is actually a good thing as well, that there is a distinguishment as well between passenger cars and between heavy duty. I think that's a good thing as well, that most of the people, I think it was so nice in the first panel, there's a different B2B versus you sell it to a consumer here. And I think that realization is there. That's a really good thing. I think that we can have the dialogue, that there is an understanding. It's a different thing. You're talking about a very different animal. But that was a little bit my reaction. Well, I thought it's actually something good. But yeah, I think the finesse then, obviously country by country, it's a different thing. Can everyone live up to that? I hear that voice now that you say that, yeah.
But you would say, yes, keep in those ambitious targets. Yeah.
That drives all of us at Neste, I would say, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to look at Matty. it's a, yeah.
Reason I'm here. Yeah.
Jacob.
No, the targets need to be ambitious, right? Because we all stand at this huge
but are they too
challenge.
ambitious?
I mean, from the vehicle technology perspective, I would say that they're not too ambitious. I think that from the vehicles that we can produce in the type of operations that they're needed, we will be able to have those types of solutions to cover the targets that are proposed. But will the enabling conditions be there? That's the big question to me. And I mean, it's both in terms of infrastructure and in terms of how we can support those that need to invest in these new solutions at a rate quick enough to get to these minus 45%, for example.
I've just scribbled down infrastructure because we'll talk more about that, and maybe because there was actually a point about regulating infrastructure that came out of the first panel as well, so maybe we can weave that into the regulation discussion. But just sticking on the targets, yes, keep the ambitious targets.
Keep the targets, but again, I mean, and also in the proposal is a review of said targets, where we have to review how infrastructure is going and how adoption rates are going. And maybe that review needs to, we also need to look at when that happens, because if it happens just before yeah.
Yeah, Licia.
No, the targets, you're right, they should be ambitious but realistic at the same time. And you can have the ambitious targets, but then you have also need the infrastructure. And if you have no infrastructure in place, then you cannot deliver. And that's exactly what, because, you know, it's not just the proposal on HDV. You have to see the other legislative proposals in this area, and everything, you know, has to fit together.
Yes.
I don't know. I am not persuaded that we will be ready, at least as regards our country, in 2030 to fulfill these ambitious targets. So and I think that the Czech presidency and the Czech Republic, we proved during our presidency that we take the European Green Deal seriously, and we were able to conclude all climate files within the Fit for 55 package during our presidency. But still, what we really, like to have is the realistic targets, ambitious but realistic.
Should we throw it out? Should we just see? So, quick hands up. Who thinks too ambitious, unrealistic and too ambitious? You raise your hands for me. Yep, there's a couple. Okay, please raise your hands if you think, no, we need very ambitious targets and these are reachable. Okay, right. They need to be that ambitious. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes, hi, Kimmo Salminen from Neste. I think we need ambitious targets. But at the same time, as Jakob put it, that the revision is a good one, that we need to see that we are on the right track in all the ecosystem parts of the ambition. But if we don't set the ambition high enough, then nothing will happen. And that is now the driving factor, what is needed in order to encourage the whole industry as well as then the consumers and all the parts who are involved to take action.
Is it fair to say it's almost, thank you, chicken and egg? If we don't have or rather what comes first, if you don't set the target, then everything else doesn't follow. I saw a big nod there. Yeah, what do you feel?
Yeah, I totally agree to this, because if we have not these targets, and they must be a little bit harder than they have to be, otherwise nothing happens. So, and that's my opinion.
Okay, Folko, if you don't have the targets, nothing happens.
No, but it's not a problem. It's not a matter of target. It's a matter of instruments. It's a matter of tools. It's a matter of policy that allow us to reach this target. Target could be the highest DI possible, but they have, as she said, they have to be realistic. We can reach them. We have to be able to reach them. So, European Commission used to use the word holistic approach when they ask us to do something. But then when they do legislative proposal, they work like in silos. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand does. So that's a problem at European level, at the policy level. Then we are not free of problem. Huh? We do our mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. But now, as you know, 80% of our national and regional legislation comes directly from Brussels. We need something more feasible.
Okay, so you're looking for a wider context. The word you used was holistic. It's bringing everything together. Gentleman over here.
Alexander Stör, Tool Fuel Services. We retail Neste My renewable diesel since 10 years on the German market. It's been a very difficult and stony road, and I fully agree with Folko Czuli. I think if we set the targets too high, that the players in the economies regularly fail the targets, then we will have a culture of failure, and we will see how can I get around to fulfilling the targets, and maybe lobby with the political representatives to make the burden of missing the targets less strict. I think we should, as a counterposition, not to be an open disagreement, but just as a counterposition, maybe we should foster a culture of success by setting aspirations, goals that are long-term, but intermediate targets that are actually reachable with the setup that we have. And for that, we need a more holistic approach and taking into account every tool that we have. Thank you.
I mean, thank you. I mean, I imagine that probably if we had our Green MEP here, he would say, well, no, sorry, we haven't got time. We haven't got time for that. It's all very well saying, let's set an aspiration, but actually we do need to push it on. Does anyone else want to have
Sasha,
a comment?
but we have no time, sure. But then, as should have said Garrett, we make fines to industries, to member states, but it doesn't change the game. We didn't reach the target. So we need that they could be feasible.
Okay.
It's very important timing, but you cannot punish. If I did my job, I'll give you an example. Me as Regione Lombardia, I'm very involved also in the pollution problem, air pollution problem. Now we are 30% less emitter of pollution than the average of Europe, but then the concentration of pollutants, because of geographical position, is 40% higher than the one allowed by the Commission. And we risk a fine of something like 200 million euro per year, even if we decrease these by 600% in the last 20 years. So please, give us the possibility. We have improved. We have demonstrated that we are improving. We have different conditions. Give us the possibility and not punish us because we are doing our homework, but we are disadvantaged. And that's the same thing for this CO2.
Okay. Katja, let me bring you in there, and then we'll move on to talking about sort of infrastructure and how all that can play in.
I liked what Volker, you said it so nicely. It's not the what we want to achieve, the ambitious, we don't have a target. It's the instruments on how to get there. And I think this freedom, I mean, it's not freedom, it's at the end, we talked about this already a lot, that there is a lot of different ways on how to get to anything in life. And I think that's today, and I link it back to your second question that you had today, in the legislation, well, there is a gap that renewables are not being recognized today. Yeah? And that is a solution we already have today. That's why I like it. It's not the what, it's a high ambition. But if we probably set it up more from a way, well, there's a lot of different instruments, there's a lot of different solutions already out there today. Renewable is just one out of them that can be used. And you work together within the different, maybe that's a better way to get there, but not change the overall big target, because I think it's good that you set the ambition so high that we need to start to dream on how to get there. I think that was a nice way of saying it.
Well, one of the challenges to get there is always the surrounding infrastructure, and that doesn't matter what other fuel that we are talking about. All of them have the challenges there. So if we are to widen this out, and you've all agreed you want different technologies, how do we seek to mitigate the challenge of bringing in the infrastructure to support those challenges? So whether that is, well, the refueling, the feedstocks, actually where the fuels are coming from, the fight for green fuels, because there's going to be a lot of consumers, different companies, different parts of industry that will want green renewable fuels. So how do we deal with all of that? How do you make sure that trucks are at the top of the queue for that? Jacob, you're looking at me very thoughtfully. So talk to me about infrastructure. What needs to change there?
I'm not sure I have an answer to the exact specific question. But I think one of the benefits of some of the renewable alternatives that we have, both if you look at biomethane but also HVO, is that they can be mixed, right? And they don't necessarily require a separate and new infrastructure. If you start doing that at a massive scale, you also, as a transport company, somehow need to be able to know that you get recognition for having chosen perhaps 100% biomethane, even though you buy from the grid, right? We've done this type of thing now together with Neste. We've run a pilot in Finland. We call it connected filling, where we can digitally match and verify the fact that a specific truck from a specific transporter has purchased a renewable fuel. And it could have been done at any type of station, as long as sort of what was purchased through certificates or whatever is actually green. So from a renewables perspective, I don't know that infrastructure is that much of an issue. I'm sure it is in some places, but there are solutions to it. On the electrification side, we heard from the first panel that as you start to have 50, 100 trucks recharging at the same place at the same time, it will require huge changes to national, regional, local grids, but also the capacity at the actual charging stations. How will we get it in? I don't know. But I also agree that obviously the mismatch in target setting and the mismatch within different legislation cannot be allowed, especially if penalties are included for one part but not the other.
So you're almost talking about like a guarantee of origin scheme for renewable fuels. So if the ones that you can mix in, you'll be able to prove what your company had chosen. Or
I think that could increase the credibility of renewable fuels in the system in general, and it could be a way in to count emissions, to know exactly which vehicle or company has what type of well-to-wheel emissions. Whereas today that's difficult, but where we were able to prove that this type of thing could actually work and could be included, if not in the CO2 standard, in other legislation promoting the use of renewables.
Doesn't that rather, though, penalise some countries or some routes that don't have that infrastructure? And you may well find, I don't know, logistics organisations going, we're not going to run that route because actually we can't refuel with renewable, therefore we can't prove to our customers who are looking at, you know, total carbon footprint.
Well, I think...
Or you don't think that would be an issue?
I think if you ask Neste, it would be quite easy to put a refueling station for HVO quite anywhere in Europe. So I think that's one. And two, if we trust the system of trading green certificates, then you don't necessarily need access to that exact type of fuel as long as the system is supplied with that amount of green.
Talk to me about the infrastructure in Lombardy. What do you have, and could you start using renewable fuels in this way? What's set up?
But, you know, we are investing a lot in hydrogen. But the real thing, from our point of view, is to hear the industry, their needs, and focus the investment of the region and our legislative action towards the needs of the industry. So that's what we really need and what we look for. I don't think it's politics that has to decide, but politics have to be in support of the European industry in order to develop their business and to make easier these new infrastructure. But once again, the problem is that now in the end, we arrive only to electrification. It will be the target. But now we are closing our, let's say, pact with the devil with Russia, and we are opening a new one with China. We don't have raw material, we don't have technology. So why are we investing all this money in putting together batteries or photovoltaic panels made by Chinese raw material in Africa and Chinese technology? When we will have our technology, when we will be able not to be dependent on the Chinese raw material, we have to push on that. Now we have to push on the other thing. We have wind, we have chemistry that can help us in developing fuels. So why don't we push on that?
Jacob.
No, just a small counter, I guess. That, I mean, the ambition, of course, and the partnerships that we're in, and it's not just Scania, it's also some of the other OEMs in Europe. We're setting up to have battery production at our own sites, buying from suppliers who set up battery production in Germany, in the north of Sweden, and so on. Sourcing materials as locally as possible, and sourcing material that's being recycled into it. The same goes for the electric machine and so on. But I agree completely. I mean, when we go for this, we should try and make sure that Europe take the lead and don't do...
It's not just the production, though, is it? The actual physical, where things come from. It's the skills of the workers as well. You mentioned the thousands of workers currently within. It's the reskilling. It's the looking after communities that were traditionally part of one industry, moving into another, reskilling. Let's talk about Czechia, infrastructure.
Yeah. Maybe on a general term,
please do.
I think that the functional infrastructure, it's a real problem, and it's very challenging because even in the most advanced member states, we don't have enough charging or refueling stations. So that's my answer to the Czech position. The starting points of the member states are really different. And the affair now should boost on this front, but let's see if it's going to be enough for the refueling and charging stops across the Europe. I don't think so, but let's see. We will have to make more effort. And another limiting factor you already mentioned is the critical situation in production of batteries, because most of them are being produced in China or other Asian countries. We are trying to do our best. The European Commission has proposed lastly a few proposals like European Battery Alliance, the Net Zero Industry Act, or a Critical Raw Materials Act. So, you know, we aim to challenge this and establish the value chain also in the Europe. But again, it will take some time. So I'm back to the, you know, ambitious targets and how ambitious they are. So for them, you know, for us to be able to fulfill them, we really need the conditions are there for the car manufacturers. But it's great to listen to you and to hear that for you, maybe it won't be a problem. So we definitely come back also to the council, and maybe it will enable us to change the position. But still, I think that it's important, if you set up the targets, to fulfill them. They are not indicative. That, you know, it's great that we have an ambition and we try to reach it. For us, if we, you know, agree on some targets, which are obligatory, then it's that we are at least somehow sure that we will be able to achieve it. If not, from a political point of view, it's very difficult to agree with. And it was mentioned there that then it's a problem if you don't fulfill what you promise. So it's really, you know, to see that somehow, at least we are, and I don't want to say sure, but at least that somehow we can reach it. But if from the beginning you know that you won't be able to reach it, then it's difficult to politically subscribe it. Even if I understand that you need some ambition to move forward, but these targets are not indicative ones.
Do you have any questions for the room? Any other points that you would quite like to hear comment from the panel on, or anything? Katja, I know you wanted to come back in on that last point as well. I looked at me and
I think it was a chicken and egg.
Oh, okay. Gosh, we're going back a little bit. Go on.
Because I was a little bit, I went now off to a different way of thinking, but you asked about it, will there be enough? And is it not a chicken and egg situation a little bit? And the interesting thing is, yes, it is, because we have, we use waste and residues to practically create biofuels. That's what we do. We have a lot of experience in that. But inside our company, and many companies do the same. They have huge innovation. They have smart people there that work on things. And we have identified hundreds of millions of additional waste and other raw materials that in the future we could turn into biofuels. And yes, it becomes a chicken and egg question, because you'll have all this power and the knowledge of so smart people and scientists. They want to work on the next big stuff. Can we take municipal waste? Can we take algae? Can we make this? Don't limit this, because you would be limiting out, if the legislation doesn't include it, you limit out that solutions that can be very significant maybe in 20, 30 years are not part anymore of the table. So yes, it is a chicken and egg, because you give companies like us, if the legislation doesn't include us, you almost take the air away from us that we would not be looking. Our scientists, all this knowledge, and that's where for me, I was a bit like, you know, when you said it's a chicken egg, yes, it is. It is. We need to get a signal. And that's why we're so ambitious, because that's what drives so many people in our companies and in many other companies as well. There's a lot of smartness in Europe there, a lot of great universities, so much innovation power, so much as well that is being recognized by the Commission with all the different initiatives as well. Let's not kill this, and let's not, Falco, you said this, go into one direction. Let's be open on that as well, because innovation is driving the next solutions of tomorrow, and there is already ideas out there. And
I think if I could take the analogy a little further, let's all stay in the hen house and talk as well. Yeah. Just keep everyone together with a discussion. Let me just end with a final thought from all of you. I'm going to ask the same question as I did to the earlier panel, but if there's one thought that you would like this room to go away with, just a very short thought, something that you would just like a little seed to place in their minds. Niels, and I'll start with you.
That's an easy one. Just make very sure not to disregard any options we have to decarbonize.
Keep everything on the table.
He stole almost what I wanted to say. So,
and remember the workers
allow
as well.
us to use the technology where we could be the best in the world.
Okay. Lucia.
Yeah, the technological neutrality can help us to reach the ambitious targets.
Yeah, I mean the same. There's no silver bullet in the solution for technology, just like there's no silver bullet in which legislation we have to look at. So much so that the title of this panel is How Can Legislation Help Deliver a Renewable Heavy-Duty Vehicle Segment? Not only how can the CO2 standard help us deliver a
Keep everything on the table, keep it open. Katja, final thought from you.
Let the technologies coexist. I think everyone said that, and I love that listen and learn. Everyone comes with a different perspective. That's the beauty of diversity and inclusion, is that we allow very different perspective to understand sometimes the reality of a different country, different people. I think that's so critical in decision making. And for now, it's really, there's lots of technologies out there. They can bring it, they can get us there, let them coexist, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Thank you.